What?
Good afternoon, and welcome back to the Jeff and the Rabbi Show. I'm Jeff. That's the Rabbi, if you were confused. Here we are. So, while CNN and MSNBC watching Kool-Aid drinkers are blaming the crazy hurricane season on man-made climate change brought on by flatulating cattle, SUVs, and non-reusable napkins used to wipe the grease off the new breakfast Taco Bell fried egg taco filled with crispy potatoes, bacon or sausage, and processed cheese spread.
How much time do you spend on that?
This took me a while to get that. The Rabbi here blames the inclement weather on lack of adherence to moral social norms. Yes, by the way, I knew that was a run-on sentence and not kosher as well.
Right.
I, for one, don't know who's making a further reach. The Rabbi, with his strong religious beliefs and his rigid adherence to the Torah, or Al Gore, with his strong belief in making money from the agreeable masses and his, well, that's probably all. But let's face it, there probably has never been a time in man's history where we have disrupted the social norms more than we are disrupting them currently. In fact, so much so that I might get in trouble for just typing the words man's history instead of gender anonymous, non-border loving, cop shunning, anthem kneeling beings history. So, I guess none of us should be surprised at a few Cat 5 hurricanes and forest fires. Maybe there actually are some supernatural consequences for utterly destroying all shreds of moral decency in this world. Or maybe it's all just a right-wing conspiracy. Let's see if the Rabbi can part the clouds on this meteorological misunderstanding.
Wow. Okay.
Thank you very much.
See what we can do with that. That was pretty deep. I think. Wow.
Yes.
Okay. Where can we get copies of that?
I'll send this out.
Yeah. So, we all know, we've all been talking about, everyone hears about, constantly this drumbeat. You know, we're destroying the climate, we have to make changes, ozone, carbon emissions, carbon footprint, on and on and on and on. And if not, sea levels are going to rise by 10 feet within the next, who knows how many years, and the polar bears.
They've already were supposed to have risen to 10 feet, and we were all supposed to have lost New York and Miami by now, but it happens.
And polar bears are going to be walking around in Manhattan and all that stuff, yeah. So, whatever. They actually, I think, they do have it right to a certain extent. And what is that? This is where the climate change proponents are in agreement with the Torah theologists.
Rabbi Gorstein, go ahead.
Yeah. So the Torah theologists and the climate change proponents believe in one thing. Man is responsible. How do you like that? Man is responsible, and to tell you the truth, I don't know if the climate is really changing, but if it is, I would not be at all surprised. I wouldn't be surprised, because there is a tremendous correlation between man's conduct and the natural course of events. And this is tipped off to us in the Torah portion where we read about Noah. Noah and the flood. God tells Noah, get in the ark, and floods out the whole world and everything like that. Talk about climate change.
That was a biggie.
That was a biggie. And then the world was out of commission for basically a year.
And we didn't even have SUVs.
Yeah, and the only people that survive is Noah. Yeah, I don't know, what caused that. Because it's interesting, even though God says that he's going to bring a flood, when it actually happens, if you read the description in the Torah, God is strangely absent. Very interesting. It says, on such a second month, 20th day of the month, whenever it is, it says, the well springs of the earth broke open, the windows of the heaven broke open, and the waters flooded up, and the waters flooded down, and the world got just flooded away. But interestingly, it does never mention that God did it.
Well, that is
just says it happened. It happened. Now you can contrast that because a little bit later in this week's Torah portion, we're going to read about another more localized event, cataclysmic equally, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Right.
And there it says, God
That's pretty
caused
clear.
the sulfur and fire to rain down on Sodom and Gomorrah. But it doesn't say that God broke open the well springs and the windows of heaven and all that. So it's very interesting. Why is that?
Man-made climate change.
So how does man make the climate change? So here's the interesting thing. God gives man a set of rules, a basic mode of conduct. There are norms. There are certain things that are norms that are decent. There are certain things that are indecent. And man has certain basic rules that he has to conduct himself according to. You have to respect the other man's wife. You have to respect basic differences, basic conduct, various species, and so on and so forth. Okay. If man starts to disregard fundamental truths of physical reality, then God might say, you know what? I'm checking out. I'm just going to step back from this whole thing. Wow. And I'm going to leave y'all to y'all's mess.
Wow.
And as soon as God steps back and leaves us to the mess that we've created, all proverbial hell breaks loose. Then all of a sudden you read, not that God made it happen.
I guess he didn't stop it from happening.
Things just burst open, because where's God? Because God checks out. You know why God checks out? Because God says, listen, I gave you a world. I gave you some basic norms to conduct yourself according to, and you did not want to conduct yourself according to those norms. And we have mentioned this before, that one of the things it talks about is that in those days, they actually legalized marriage between members of the same gender.
Wow. Wow.
That is one of them. Now, the fact that people were having relations with members of the same gender, that's probably been a universal truth for who knows how long.
Right.
But when a society legalizes the marriage, then that society is basically saying we don't even recognize a norm of men, let's say, marrying women, women marrying men. That's not a norm anymore. Once you have disregarded fundamental norms of societal conduct, then God, in turn, disregards norms of natural conduct.
Wow.
Because God creates a norm of societal, cultural conduct. If we don't recognize those, then God takes away. So now it takes away the norms of physical world. So now all kinds of crazy things start happening.
So you're pretty much saying if cameraman Ken starts listening to Cher records and comes into the office in a tutu, it's probably going to be like tornado season here in Atlanta. Is that what you're saying?
I don't want to start drawing like any direct correlations, but I would say that when it talked about the flood and Noah,
right,
it said, Ki hishlis kol basar, for all living things had degenerated in their way on the earth. That means that, and as a matter of fact, the famous Midrash talks about how the fact that some of the animals started conducting themselves homosexually. Why did the animals do that? Because the people were doing that. Now, what does that mean? That means if the people remove their norms, so barriers and structures were now removed, washed away. And what happens in its place? Anything can just take place. So the water, all of a sudden,
you're getting rid of the norms of society, and so God gets the norms,
right,
rid of the norms in nature, and then norms.
So if we look at it, let's say there's a world, and down deep there's water, and maybe up in the heavens there's water, and all of a sudden all the water from down deep comes gushing up. Where did that come from? Because God, who was maintaining, as we read in the beginning of the story of creation, God took the upper waters and the lower waters. He put the upper waters up and the lower waters down, and in between he spread out something called a rakia. Now, what happens? God just steps away. God steps away, everything just breaks loose.
Well, that would explain a lot of things lately, wouldn't it?
So things are just breaking loose. Maybe they're starting, on a lower level now. They're just starting to crank up. But we see unusual things happen. Norms that we have been used to, physical norms that we've been used to for a long time, all of a sudden start changing. Well, there are societal norms. that we have been used to for a very long time, and they're changing.
In a bat of an eye, they're all changing now. No, we're man, not a man, a woman's not a woman, and
Right.
they can be anything they want to be.
That's right. You can't define anyone. The very genders are not definable. Roles certainly not definable. Now, some people might say, "Well, that's wonderful." Well, that's great. If you like that loose, ill-defined world, how about having a loose, natural, ill-defined world?
Very good point.
Where, any old day, some crazy hurricane, the likes of which have never been seen before, the strongest, most powerful, and so on and so forth. All this stuff can come flooding by, or shooting by, or temperatures, and great discrepancies, and great fluctuations, and all these type of things. Water levels rising, So these things are to be expected, because if you do away with societal norms, so God's gift to us is that He maintains a world with natural or physical norms for us to function in.
And He pretty much tells us what those norms are.
Yeah. So He sure does. And then He gives us this world, the way He set it up, and the way it functions, and so seasons, and so on and so forth. But you want to start taking those things away on our end, He'll take them away on His end.
So if Cameraman Ken becomes Cameraman Kate, we might even have more problems with earthquakes, forest fires, and everything else going on in this world.
You never know. You never know. You could turn around. You could turn around, and the craziest things would happen. So
Very
all of this is because, but we do believe. This is where we have this one belief, and this is part of the, I think, universal belief nowadays, that everyone is interrelated. Which is, we believe that we are interrelated even on a moral level, and that moral changes in one place produce natural changes in another place. Although the moral changes seem to be sweeping the world, maybe there's some places that don't have them, but they seem to be becoming more and more and more universal. And we're finding that nature is changing more universally.
So what happens to the few people out in the world who are watching the show today and say, you know what, we've got to put a stop to this? What do you do? I mean, how do you stop progress or progressivism? How do you stop it? Listen, we're just evolving as a species. I mean, I always thought evolution took a little longer, but we're evolving. And, today a man can be a man, tomorrow a woman, and tomorrow there's going to be obviously something else.
Right.
What do we do?
That's a fantastic question. If you watch...
I get one to show.
There you go. Look at the progression of the Torah. First portion, Genesis. Tells the story of creation. Next portion, Noah. What happened? All the people degenerated, then they got flooded out. Then he came back out, and then he built the Tower of Babel, and he had to disperse them. Then we talk about the generation of a man named Enosh, when they start doing idolatry. So basically, everyone got knocked off. Everyone got diverted. God created a world where He wanted man to be God observant, and man was not. Next portion, who comes along next? Guy named Abraham.
Right.
One man, one solitary man, and his wife Sarah, and the two of them started walking around from place to place to place, and they started saying, "What are you doing that for?" The classic story about Abraham is running his father's idol shop, father's idol shop. So there's a bunch of different versions of this. In one of them, a guy comes in, he wants to buy an idol. So Abraham says to the guy, "How old are you?" He said, "I'm about 60. Isn't that amazing? A guy who's about 60 wants to bow down to an idol that was just built this morning.
I never heard that. I never heard that version.
Well, what's that? The idol was just built this morning. We just made him in the shop, Why would you want to buy an idol that was just built and you want to bow down to it? What's that about? And then the guy would go, "Yeah, what is that about?" So Abraham would say, let me give you a different worldview. And you know what? Abraham, hugely successful.
Not in business, obviously.
Yeah, right.
Not in the idol business. I don't think he did that well.
But he managed to get the word around, and so did his children. So you see from there that one resolute couple, Abraham and Sarah, can accomplish tremendous things in this world.
So, reading into that, obviously the Jews are supposed to be a light of the nations. We're supposed to be the teachers in the world. Are we then supposed to be people to stand up and say, hey, wait a minute, cameraman Ken, don't put on the skirt so soon? I mean, are we supposed to be saying that? I mean, we seem to be on the other side of this in a lot of ways.
Right. So if we want to, if the world wants to get a grip, so then we have to start to preach this idea of norms, of fundamental decency, of understanding that there's a world that was created by God. He has the things that he wants and the things that he doesn't want. And the more that we preach that, the more that we teach that, the more that we observe that, the more that we'll keep the world grounded. And it doesn't have to be big numbers. It can even be the few. Abraham was one man. He was from the other side of the river. That means Abraham in his entire life was on the other side. Abraham was always on the other side. That's what the Jews are, on the other side. Whatever society is professing, the Jews find themselves on the other side. And in this case, although, most people identify Jews with very, very liberal causes, but I think that the Jews that stick with the Torah, finding themselves on the other side of contemporary norms,
right?
And they're supposed to be promoting another vision.
I mean, although it might not work out, I mean, Abraham could not stop the destruction of Sodom. I mean, Noah could not, I don't think he tried to stop the destruction of the world, but one man can't do it. So you need to have as Abraham said, if you got down to 10 men, it would have saved Sodom.
But at least Abraham contained it to localized places.
Which is true.
There's always going to be problems. I don't know what we're going to be able to do about San Francisco.
I was just going to say, if Atlanta's okay and San Francisco's a little off,
but maybe to keep the world in general in good shape. I mean, there always will be localized problems. There's always going to be issues where people spin out of control, certain locales, certain groups, maybe even certain countries, whatever it is. But to try to give the world a grip on fundamental truths and to maintain a certain real natural balance where God is involved, that I think that we can do.
Gotta tell you, this really makes you nervous to get on an airplane. Like, I could be out there, I'm thinking good stuff, but I don't know what that guy in C4B is doing, and the guy in 32C, they're sitting together, they look like they're holding hands. I mean, do I have to control the majority of that airplane, or I get a little worried if the norms of nature might have a problem there with aerodynamics,
right?
Because of that.
It is true, and that gets into a whole nother topic, which is sometimes when God has decided that something's going to happen in a perfect locale, in a particular locale, or to a particular group, sometimes good people could get swept up in that.
And
that's where it goes. So. But what we're trying to do, we're talking about globally, we're trying to get people to embrace traditional societal norms and a culture that believes that God is laid out certain rules and regulations. And if people do that, then we can get a grip and hold on to natural norms also.
Well, you're going to have a tough fight. I mean, because it might be a little bit easier now than it was, last year at this time. But I mean, like now it's the law. The law of the land is if I see cameraman Ken at the store and I don't call him Ken, I'm going to get in trouble. And if I don't allow them to go shower in the fitness place with somebody else, I can get in trouble. So it's kind of it's happening a lot quicker, and maybe that's why we're seeing these changes now.
Yeah.
Things are happening at a very fast pace, going against everything that you've just said.
Right. But we do believe we are Messiah anticipators. And we do believe that, it's going to get bad, and it's going to get bad, but then it'll get good. And our job is to hold on and try to stay the course and remain dedicated and be there for when it does get good.
Well, let me just clarify one thing, because maybe this will help some people who might be thinking, oh, wow, that's a tough talk by the rabbi here. Is your worry just that single guy out there that's, or is it just when society itself?
Yeah.
I mean, is it okay? I mean, you're not saying you can't be gay.
Yeah, I'm not really worried per se about any individual's personal conduct. Any individual's personal conduct is really between him and God. I'm not so worried.
And I think that's kind of important.
This guy is conducting himself like this, and that guy's conducting himself like that.
So you're not the moral police on this guy here and that
Yeah,
guy.
everybody's got their own life, and they'll deal with God, and God will deal with them, and it's all their business. But society as a whole, when society makes decisions, and society promotes a particular worldview, and society promotes a particular ethic, and society tries to stifle anyone that promotes an opposing worldview or ethic, that's more of an issue.
And you're not trying to stifle anybody who has a different view. And I guess you said that's between them and God.
Right.
But it's a societal issue when you change society, and that's what happened in the flood, and that's what you're worried
Right.
is
That's what
happening and going to happen now.
where changes were made. So when changes are made, you should not be surprised to see changes occur. That's all I'm saying. When change is made, except I'm saying when changes are made societally and culturally, one should not be surprised to see changes occur naturally and physically.
Wow. I think that was the best definition, best explanation of climate change I've ever heard. And I would say 97% of the people in this room agree with your definition of climate change, because that's how they come up with it in their statistics. So from now on, we can say 90% of the scientists in this room agree with what you say.
That's
so
right.
It's got to be. We got to be right.
all agree that climate change is man-made.
I'm with you there.
How do you like that?
Wow. We've come to an agreement.
We've come together. I brought the world together. Isn't it beautiful?
This is beautiful. Wow. So if we make it to next week, we will be back. And by the way, cameraman Ken, keep your pants on. That'll probably help us. No skirt. And I think we'll make it to next week. See you then.